Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Rally Podcast. I'm Mike White here with Logan Cornelius and Sean Boyer. It's going to be a quick one for you. Running out of time a little bit today. Our schedules are packed, but we're going to be talking Roundnet broadcasting. Of course, the Lost Season episode 2 just came out. And of course, streaming and the future of Roundnet broadcasting is always talked about. So we got a couple things today we're going to drill through, starting with kind of our basic reactions to the Lost Season episode 3 and what the community thought.
Episode 2.
Sorry, episode 2. There's no episode 3, so I'm not.
Mike,
No. Maybe there is an episode 3.
Ahead of ourselves there.
Yeah.
All
right.
But no, I thought for me, and I may be biased because I worked on both, but I thought episode 2 was just a lot higher production quality. I know it was just based on how we did it, which was cool to see, and just us learning the ins and outs of doing this internally. But then even externally, one thing I always check when these broadcasts go up is Twitter, and we had a lot less negative sort of, maybe people are just getting used to seeing Spikeball on the ESPNs of the world, but a lot less like, what is this sport? Why is this here? And more kind of positive comments, which is cool to see.
Yeah, not that a lot of people are inherently negative. We see that in our community sometimes, but it's also true of everyone elsewhere. I know so many exactly the Twitter comments you're talking about is just like, what is this? I hate it, and just making fun of it. And so it's funny that like just the lack of that makes it feel like, oh, they're just apathetic. We'll take that.
Yeah. That's what Twitter's for, right? It's not used as like a positive measurement. It's like, oh yeah, the less negative, the better. And and I think
no one
overall,
opens Twitter when they have a good thing. No one's like, "Ooh, this cheesecake is great. Let's tweet about it." They're just like, "This cheesecake sucks."
Yeah, so that really is a positive standard. And I felt like I saw some positive feedback as well on it too. So definitely our highest production value, hands down.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, even the comments on the SRA Facebook page, it seemed like people generally enjoyed it more. Maybe it wasn't, there's some things here and there that they want to see different, but that's always a gauge for me, because our diehard fans are the ones that are going to have the strongest opinions usually.
Yeah, and I think, right, I think the reason, or there was less talk about Offseason episode 2, because I think it's at a point, like, I think the reason community members and otherwise have not enjoyed it and have had negative comments have been like, the gameplay is not very good, and kind of that our sport doesn't look very good. And I think this episode didn't, right? The sport still doesn't look great, but it looks better, and it also like doesn't get into that. So I think the takeaway, instead of like, our sport is not fun to watch, so therefore the broadcast is not good to watch. This was like, the broadcast was good to watch, but it would be great if we didn't have to do a whole story for it to be watchable. Sure. If it was just a pure match and it was fun to watch.
I mean, the goal is where the gameplay is as entertaining or more entertaining than the personalities involved, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's something that's in some ways out of the control of at least the production side of things. It comes down to the players and the sport and the direction, but just doing the best we can with what we got.
And part of that too, a little bit of that is just like, being on ESPN, it's a much different audience. A lot of people haven't heard of the sport before. So obviously, like, the more entertaining the sport is, the better. But part of it doesn't matter how entertaining a sport is. People aren't going to watch if they're not familiar with it. They don't know it. So there's a little bit of that you have to work with as well.
Right. And I was just trying to like think about that, right? When these broadcasts are out, right? They have a different sort of purpose, right? They aren't live. They aren't like, hey, we're getting together to watch an NFL football game. So, to me, because they're not live, for me, and with I think the tournament format is also a very different thing to tackle, right? If it's just one match, you can just do that. And like, it has an inherent storyline of like this versus this, but a tournament is a whole different thing, because you have tons of different storylines, tons of different things. So I think the way we were doing it before, where it was like 1 hour for a whole tournament, I think, right, this format with the story fits better into kind of the format that we were already doing. If you know what I mean, right? A live broadcast would be very different.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we're working through too, and because with ESPN, I think intuitively you'd think the content that's going to do best there's your traditional sports broadcast coverage of a tournament X, Y, and Z, and not so much the docu-series learning about people you've never met. But it's just something we're still learning. And people have been asking, like, will there be a lost season 3, or will this continue? And since that was, I mean, the storylines there were tied a lot into the pandemic and what's been going on there, and us not having a season last year. So our fingers are crossed that will be the end of the road for this series, just because now we can start covering maybe actual events or things with fans and just different storylines. But we'll see. We are, I don't know how much I can say just yet, but we're in talks with ESPN about doing some more broadcasts this year. And I think it's cool that a brand like ESPN is excited to have us on board. So we're not trying to take that for granted.
That's some exciting stuff.
That's very cool. Something else I wanted to touch on was also like, I know you don't know the specifics of what's going to partake this year, but right, this season, because it was so different, right? These were small invite only events, but those also make it much more conducive, as we saw with the Summer Spike broadcast. The smaller, things together are more conducive to storylines and kind of showing the day. And I remember, right, logistically, a lot had to change for Lancaster and for Summer Spike for those things to happen. So kind of like the future where these broadcasts seem to not very well work with our current format, if you know what I mean. Maybe there's a point where we do, but kind of where do you see them separating, maybe invite only broadcasts versus, tournaments or just tournament finals?
Yeah, it's I do think that, like, if we think about spike ball content as a whole, there's so many different levels of this spectrum, ranging from the people just playing in the backyard having a dope rally to people up on an ESPN broadcast. And so I do think as long as ESPN keeps asking for broadcasts, we'll keep churning those out, and those will probably fall in line with the things we've done, like the Coney Islands, where we it's modeled around tournament structure, but we also do want to explore the long form types of things that maybe go into a piece of history with the community or a certain team, or storylines that have a little more fun to them, and we can really delve into. But time will tell what happens, and who knows? Like 3-4 years from now, is someone like ESPN covering all the events of a tour series, and they are live. Right. That's sort of tied into the trajectory of the sport and the progress that is made on that side of things with what people want to watch. Mm-hmm. And the whole other factor here is the industry of just cable, traditional TV kind of pushed towards the wayside, while these over-the-top platforms that are all very internet-based come in and figure out streaming. So it's a very cool, ever-evolving space that we're just trying to find how we fit into it.
Right. And I think thinking of that, like, right, how we currently stream our events, I think that will not, be going away, because, these ESPN broadcasts, like I said, are not live, they're after, but people still want to enjoy Roundnet live as they should, right? So that's a different sector. And of course, ESPN broadcast quality is not the same as a stream quality. Well, it's very, very hard to do that type of thing, right? The reason that they're these after the fact broadcasts is because you have time to edit and make it all together. I'm surprised at how much does go into it live, right? Like they record like the scoreboard live and all of those things kind of together. I was actually genuinely surprised by all that. But like, I think going forward, like streaming will still be until down the road, if there is a deal with ESPN where they're broadcasting our things on ESPN Plus. I think our internal streaming is still like a very much important part of, Roundnet.
Yeah, and like that type of content, I think at least currently appeals to a much smaller slice of the pie, which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it's just about how we put our time and resources to making it happen, and the production value. And like, it's just a different lens than when we're going to an audience, a bunch of people who have never seen it before.
Right. You can think about what are you trying to attain, right? Are you trying to gain new players, gain new fans, or simply just display the live matches that people want to watch? I think there's something in between where you could have a nice live broadcast. So people that people won't stumble upon it really, like they stumble upon an ESPN thing, but say they stumble upon it or they hear about it, they come in and they're like, okay, this is pretty nice. I understand this. And then it's fun to watch, while you also have the people that are going to watch every week, no matter what, and them enjoying it. I think there's a nice equilibrium there where you want it to be like, I guess it can be as nice as you want, but I think that's unrealistic. It has to be like nice enough to really enjoy and to really look professional, but that's also very challenging to do live and expensive. Yeah. But speaking of that, is we were talking about, if we did have unlimited funds, how do you think you would want to go about making the best stream or broadcast? Because currently around, we've done a little bit with the handheld gimbal. We've done a little bit with the high angle on ESPN. Some people talking about drones. What do you guys think?
I mean, if money, stats.
Oh, stats.
I think where it would start, if money was no limit, was we'd literally build out a stadium that could capture all this in the way we want it. So we'd have like what the NFL does with the cables and the cameras that can go across, and a stats booth, replays and everything like in live time. It would be the highest production value imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
What Sean's saying is basically like, look at NFL games and there you go.
And make the Spikeball Roundnet version of that.
Yeah.
I'm always, again, so impressed. Like every play, they seem to have a camera on every single person, right? Like every guy running a route has a camera on them. And I'm like, we have 2 cameras. They have 40 cameras.
Well, we also only have 4 players, so maybe we can just do double our budget and
That's true.
Get 4 cameras.
The real bottleneck is camera people. But
yeah,
it's so cool. Just they have every single aspect of it. My favorite thing is players mic'd up. I know that's not really that great. They don't really. Those are just segments during a live broadcast, but when they post them afterwards, I think it's the coolest thing.
Well, even during live broadcast, like it adds a lot, and it's like because it comes in and out. You can hear the player's audio, and I think it's a really fun addition to like broadcast. Even if like you can't hear necessarily specific things, like they use that to get in on the game a little bit.
Yeah, you can hear the grunts. You can hear the white 80 set. I watch football.
Yeah,
I watch football.
It's like during there was like the game on Nickelodeon. There was a little fupa because they like had the player's mic on, and there was the curse word dropped, and it was like on live television. So that was something that happened during the Nickelodeon game. So you can hear pretty soundly what people are saying.
I think camera wise, I still like gimbal best. Maybe not gimbal specifically, but like being in on the action. I think without the sense of depth, the stationary, I think even just if you had a camera on a tripod and you can move it, that adds a little bit of depth, but being really close up adds so much. And to me, the drone, although it looks really nice, maybe in between points, during a point, it just feels weightless to me, which I don't really like.
You mean like filming up top from a drone? Is that what you're saying?
Well, so even if it was like off just a little bit, like at 2018 Nationals, we had kind of like this crane with a high up camera. And for me, that doesn't really work. I really prefer close to the action.
pain point with that is since most sports either have like defined perimeters or sides or what have you, is always like one, where do we station our sort of camera setup? Or we almost make like this semicircle that doesn't take up too much of the 360 degrees, and how close in can you get with a guy on a gimbal without actually being in the shot of the high camera.
Yeah.
But I totally agree, Mike. I think those up close shots are the best, but it's almost like we'd have to do away with our wide angle if we go with the up close.
And what I hate is like, right, other sports don't really have those, or the gimbal is in the middle of like the play, right? Like usually all of the camera people are on the outskirts. You don't really notice them. And I think the more realistic notion is, how do we get that to look as good as possible? Because I don't think having two or three people running around in the point also looks very good, but it looks so good, but it just, as a spectator, I'm sure it's kind of annoying, and it doesn't from the wide angle, it doesn't look great.
Yeah, a unique problem to have for sure.
If you had to have like so the stationary camera, so the last season too had kind of a higher angle. Did you prefer that? Did you like that?
I, in general, if we're talking wide angles, do like a higher vantage. And like, I'm not saying you would want to watch a full game from a bird's eye 360 or from a drone, but I think that angle is so cool because it shows so much more of the angles and where you can hit the ball and how defensive and offensive rotates that I think gets a little lost on the average or beginner viewer from just like straight on side view.
Yeah. So thinking of the last season, right, there were some clips where they would run out of frame, right, and then it would change to this kind of camera person on the side. I think maybe that's kind of an ideal best of both worlds. Like you have a camera that's in on the net, but whenever it trails far away, you have these people on the sideline that really like follow the play off and back. So you get that close shot without having to be like in the play.
Totally.
Yeah, maybe, and also some more side angles on the serves. So I think a nice healthy mix of the two.
Yeah, and I mean at the last broadcast we had, I think, 5 cameras going across the board. So we could cut to a lot of them, but at the same time, in most plays there's like 2 or 3 cameras just wouldn't work for that angle, and so it's almost more the merrier at that point.
Yeah, you just have to have the camera. There may just be like one shot, but like if you're going to use it, might be the perfect shot. But some of the cameras you may hardly ever use.
Yeah, exactly.
That's stressing me out thinking about how to implement all that for a stream setup.
Yeah,
it just depends on the budget.
Well, that and like asking ourselves on these live streams, what do the people like? Why are they there? Is it new people learning like what is the sport, or is it community members just wanting to like watch the action? And maybe they have a lower bar of production value just because they want to like see what happens.
Right. Like I think of it's just so hard for us because all the examples are like they just do both, right? Like every major broadcast is huge, but that's also a massive industry and massive amounts of money. So I think that's the hardest thing. Because like you want it to be, I mean, I think it just comes as we'll make it as good as maybe, I don't want to say like the resources. It's really hard to say. I wanted to say like, because the biggest bottlenecks are like we don't have camera people and things. And you can always hire people to do that, which is a different story,
Well, that's too. Go for it, Logan.
I was just gonna say in these big industries as well, like it's like an ecosystem and there's broadcast rights. So it's like it's something that's producing the ability to make more. Whereas like we haven't hit that point yet. Whereas like in the NFL and everything, like, they're paying for broadcast rights and filming all that. And the live games is bringing in tons of money. And so like we're still building up to that point to do that. So
I think really it's also, from the perspective is all this stuff is sort of an investment as well. It's a chicken or the egg. which is how I always
Yeah.
said, like, you know, you want to, right? We don't get many viewers. So why do you need an amazing broadcast? Well, will we ever get a lot of viewers if we don't have an amazing broadcast? But
that and what I think we get caught up on the sport development side too is like we forget we're still very young.
right.
Sport's been around what, a decade. We've been trying to get on we've been making broadcasts for ESPN for what, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like we gotta give ourselves a little credit in how far we've come and how much more time and room we have to grow.
Yeah, it's year 6, and I'm comparing ourselves to a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
Which is great though, because like you
even
want high aspirations, but
yeah,
at the same time.
and that's what's crazy. You think like young sports, even like say like ultimate or like, you know, even go to like cornhole, like those of sports have been around a lot longer than us. Like disc golf have been around a lot longer than us. So it's crazy that like we're being able to produce this kind of stuff in the short amount of time. So just balancing kind of those expectations and aspirations.
As my last comment, because we have to go, I think what is thinking about those things is I think about Roundnet truly is a little simpler because it's such in a small location, you know, right? Like just the view on the net is just 50 by 50. That's all you need. Like you only need a few cameras to cover that area, right? We're not going all the way down 100 yards or all that stuff. And I think that's what actually may really help us in these early times, that you only have to capture just a small bit of the field, which is really cool. Really, most of the game is just like a 12 by 12 box. Once or twice a game, they'll leave that box.
Yeah. I think they call Roundnet the beautiful game, right? Isn't that what they say?
Beautiful game. Anyway, viewers, we have to go. Thank you for enjoying our ramblings today. I'm curious in the comment on like where you think the ideal Roundnet viewing spot is. You like the gimbal, you like up high, you like a drone, or you just kind of like straight on from the side. Some people love that straight on from the side so they can see those nice angles. So let us know in the comments, and also please like and subscribe. It makes us feel better about doing this. And Logan's going to go in a lot of debt due to GameStop, as you can see. So like it for him.
Going up.
Oh,
up
to the moon. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
All hard.